Robert Poole, and this is I guess it's the fourth part of this series on how do we hire, how do we attract the right candidates and build a team in, this super competitive job market that we're in right now, the post-COVID era where, you can make $19 an hour at Taco Bell just for showing up, and they still can't people get, get them to show up, even at that. So we're going to talk about, how do we do this now that we've gone from the defining who we're looking for, building a scorecard of all the attributes and the results that we're looking for people. Again, not the tasks we're expecting them to do, but the results that we're expecting them to get. We talked about sourcing, how we find as many potential candidates that we can start with. And then we started the screening process in the last video, where I talked about, how the whole point of the process is not to find some good people, but to get rid of all the other stuff. And we got to look at it from that standpoint. So in this video, we're going to talk about the actual interview process. So let's say you've taken that big pool of candidates that you sourced, you've screened out most of them, which is a good thing. So again, don't get discouraged when you screen out everybody. If you screen out everybody and they don't even make it to this process, great. You need to go back to the sourcing and have some patience. If it takes 3 months or it takes 6 months, it's much better again than the consequences of a bad hire that we talked about and how vastly expensive that is, particularly for a small business. We've got limited amount of funds. We're not a Fortune 500 company. We don't have money to burn, so we better get this right as many times as we can. And so I'm going to go over a few ideas and things that we've used in recent years, which has really enhanced our hiring process. And again, I can't take credit for all this stuff. There's a fantastic book called Who, WHO by Jeffrey Smart, and I think it's Randy Street is the other author. So a lot of this comes from their book. We took it and kind of modified it to fit our business model of our company. But a lot of this stuff comes from there. So if you haven't read that book, there's a link in the description. You can get it on Amazon. I have no financial interest or anything like that. I'm not an affiliate, but it's just a fantastic book that has helped us amazingly well. So again, a lot of this comes from them, so I won't take credit for it. But one of the things that we started doing years ago, regardless of the position that we're hiring for, is that we actually do a phone interview first before we do an in-person, or these days even a virtual interview. And it's another way again of screening people out. I've talked about many times, this process is painful, it's time consuming, and anything we can do to speed up, to streamline that process and minimize the stress on us personally, our team, and speed up the whole thing so we don't waste a lot of time. And the phone interview is a great way to do that. Instead of having to have somebody come into the office or do a Zoom meeting with them or whatever, we can screen them out and get rid of most of the people with a phone interview. So how do we do that? There's a couple things. First, it's got to be a limited time. So I generally shoot for, I'll tell a person, 15 minutes max, sometimes even 10 minutes max, whatever it is. And you can end the interview shortly if you want. If you find out 2 minutes into it that they're like, no way, this person's out of here. Then you can politely say, okay, great. Well, hey, I got another meeting, so I'm going to leave it at that. We'll get back to you, if you have any further questions, whatever, Some people may not like that, but hey, you got to be ruthless about this, with your time, because otherwise this is just going to take forever. It's bad. It's time consuming enough. So it's very important that we tell the person on the phone exactly what to expect, and we control the conversation. Just like a good sales conversation, you've got to control the conversation. So tell them up front, hey, this is a max 15 minutes. It may not take that long, but this is just a quick, interview to see if you're even in the range of what we're looking for, and you get an idea of, if you're what are the kind of company you're looking for. Sound fair? Great. And then you say, hey, first of all, I'm going to ask several questions from you. Then once I'm done with those simple questions, you can ask any questions you want from me. And then we'll wrap it up, like I said, very quickly, a max of 15 minutes. Sound good? Great. And so what do? We go through there are 4 main questions that the authors talked about in that Who book. The first one is, what are your career goals? So you'll ask the person, what are your career goals? And again, with any of these answers, if they can't come up with an answer, if we stump them, if the answer sounds, ridiculous, whatever, again, boom, that is your key that they're not the person that we're looking for. So get rid of them in the call. So first career goals, then you ask them, what are you really good at professionally? And this is again, B and C players will stumble on this and they'll go, well, where the A players will be excited to tell you about how great they are at what they do, specific things. And then you also, want to ask them things like, what are you not good at professionally? Or even better, what are you not interested in professionally? If they say, I like this aspect, but this one aspect of the job, that I've done in the past, I really don't like that. And, you look back at your scorecard because you're thinking about the scorecard this whole time, and the scorecard has that same thing. They need to be able to do that to get that result, and they have no interest in it. Guess what? Red flag, bam, out of there. And then, last, we want to go through, and this is something that I really had trouble with at first, but because it felt uncomfortable. But again, this is so important because it's going to screen out the B and C players. This will scare them off. And so you want to say something like, who are your last 5 bosses, from the 5 companies you've worked for, whatever number it may be. If they've only worked for 3 companies, great, say 3, bosses. Who are they? What are their names? And how would they rate you? And you say, when we talk to them, how are they going to rate you on 1 to 10 in your performance on that job? And it's very important. If you notice, I said, when we talk to them, because they need to know that we are actually going to talk to those people. We're actually going to reach out to them. So basically, you better be honest. If your boss, the last one, hated them or whatever, and was going to give them a 2, we want to find out about that again because we don't want to waste our time. So this is quick, and this is a way to get those red flags to get out of here. And again, if they're not willing to provide that information, it's understandable if their current boss, they don't want to provide that if they're currently working, which again, that's what we're looking for. But previous bosses, they need to be able to provide that information. We'll talk about that more in the reference section. But, if they don't want to talk about that or they have a hard time with it, that's your red flag. That's your get rid of them thing. And then, very simple, end the call with, hey, Grant, well, thanks for your time. After they've asked some questions, whatever, cut it off because you're going to get some people who are long-winded. Say, hey, great, thanks for your time. We'll get back to you with any questions, or if we want to move forward in the process. And some people will say, well, are you going to call me either way? And you say, no, we can't call everybody. So if you don't hear from us, that means that we've moved on with a different candidate. There's this idea that, that out of courtesy, we should tell people that we're not interested any longer or, go find it somewhere else. And my attitude's always been, well, the default is if we don't call you back, that means we're not interested. So again, it's just too time consuming to do stuff like that. So don't bother. If they're offended by that, again, they're not the right person. So who cares? That may sound bad, but it's just reality. We're here, and we can't waste time doing things that, because of somebody's feelings might be hurt. Again, if they're an A player, they're not going to be hurt. So if we do a phone interview and we decide, okay, we're going to move on with this person, then we want to either do in person, if they're locally hiring, whatever, or virtual. It actually doesn't make any difference. It's the same process, And so we set up the thing, and you also want to set a time limit on this, whatever, it depends on the complexity of the position, if you're hiring for, a receptionist or, something that's, fairly simple, versus you're hiring for, a general manager of your company of 50 people or whatever, it's a little different, the time length. But again, set the time length, tell them, hey, we're going to spend 45 minutes together. This is what we're going to talk about. And so they know what to expect. And again, A players will appreciate that. And so the great thing about interviewing in person or with Zoom is the body language. So all of these with Zoom, of course, you want to record it. And I would even recommend something we do. If we're doing an in-person interview, we also record that. We'll set up a video camera. So the whole session is recorded and the person knows they're being recorded. The reason for that is that we want to be able to go back if we're on the fence about somebody, or we just have somebody, we'll have somebody else in our company who wasn't in the interview watch the interview because they're going to pick up things we didn't pick up, because sometimes, we're sitting there going through our questions or thinking about something, and we didn't realize that, they just did something with their body that's completely incongruent with what they said. Basically, they're lying. And it's very obvious because of the way their body language is doing. Or, you ask them something, about a specific result that you wanted to get, and you can tell that suddenly they tense up, and you can tell that makes them really nervous that they can't do that. Again, so body language is extremely important to read, and you've got to record it so you can go back and look at it. And all this sounds like a pain again, as I've said over and over again, but hey, it makes, it's worth your time based upon the consequences of not doing it right. So we got to get this right. If we, again, you got to watch about when you're actually talking to somebody, you got to watch those that, they want to answer a question and they're going to go on a monologue or whatever for 5 minutes and go on and on. They're just some personalities that just want to talk, And, this is where, again, you got to be a little ruthless and say, you got to interrupt them and clarify things and say, okay, yeah, and so next, whatever. And it's going to be uncomfortable at first, but you've got to do it. You've got to protect your time. Another thing is that I forgot to mention, you want to do this as a group interview if you can. If it's just you, obviously that's all you got. But, if you've got even one employee, you want to do it together. And what it allows you to do is sort of tag team asking questions, and you get two different perspectives. We always do it with at least two people. I'll do it with somebody else, or two people will do it with themselves. And afterwards, they can compare notes and they can say, oh yeah, did you pick up on this? And the other person, oh, I didn't even see that. So it allows you, and it also, again, goes back to confidence. The A players will dig that. They'll like, kind of the challenge of, impressing multiple people, whereas a B and C player will get freaked out by that, and they won't do very well. So again, that's our chance to red flag them and get them out of here. And so what we want to do is, this is our chance to ask them very specific questions about results that they've gotten at previous jobs. And it goes back to, some of these questions go back to the Who book I mentioned. So for each job, you want to start out with something like, what specifically were you hired to do? And we want to start with the last job on their, or the longest to go job, the first job on their resume, so to speak. So they got 5 jobs, and then you start with the oldest one. And then you say something like, what accomplishments are you most proud of, during that? Again, that's going after results, comparing it to the scorecard. And then you ask them, and what mistakes or what things happened that you think you could have done better, and what lessons did you learn from that about that specific thing? A specific result, again, not a task, a result. You want to say, what are the low points, And then you want to ask them things like, and tell me about who you work with specifically. Who is on your team, and that will give you an idea of how they interact with others. If they had subordinates, do they talk about, I had 3 morons that worked for me. That ought to tell you something right there. Red flag, bam, they're out of here. Or, I had a fantastic team that worked for me. I had coworkers who supported me, and we did this and this and this. We really worked great as a team. That's what we're looking for. So, and then of course, the question of why did you leave that job, and if they, depending on their answer, you'll have people, I mean, it's amazing when you ask people the answers you get sometimes. I've had people, tell me, well, my boss was a jerk, or, they were just, they didn't want to give me any opportunity, or, whatever, it's just some negative, petty response that just doesn't make any common sense. Why would you ever tell a potential future employee that their boss was a jerk? It's like, that means they're behind your back. They're going to call you a jerk. So things like that, why did you leave? And it's usually because what we're looking for is somebody who left for a better opportunity, or to contribute more, or whatever, back to the scorecard thing. And that's what we're looking for, the A players who will answer those questions like that. And then we want to ask them, well, what we're trying to get at again is the results, you want to talk to them about the results that we're expecting on the scorecard. So going back to that first video, I think I said something like, you've got we're looking for somebody who can, increase the sales of this particular product line, whatever, from $1 million to $2 million in the next 12 months. Tell me, an example of how you did something similar. So we're trying to find out similar results that they've gotten in the past to basically almost prove in advance that they can handle those things on the scorecard. They can handle those results, you know. And again, the A players will be falling over themselves to tell you about the time when they did something similar and to show you and persuade you that, hey, I've done that before, therefore I can do it again. Whereas the B and C players will be like, well, I mean, I did this or did, basically they can't answer the question because they haven't got their result. And hey, imagine that, red flag, bam, you're out of here. And then, we're just at that point, just like a phone interview, we're ending the interview and saying, hey, great, thanks so much for your time, blah, blah, blah. And we will get back to you, if we're interested in moving forward or if we got any questions. If you don't hear from us, that means we went with another candidate, have a great day, boom. So again, this is a process that, first few times we did it, it was really uncomfortable because it's different than the way you used to do interviews. The way that I did interviews for many years was the typical, oh, hey, great, nice to meet you, Bob. Ha, you found a place to pass the first test, Oh, how's the weather? What about that game the other night? Basically you're just BSing with somebody, for an hour, wasting your time, not finding out anything relevant, to the results that you're looking for on that scorecard. And so this allows you to be very specific and tie everything back to that original scorecard. If we do that, that allows us to find the right people, and we won't make the mistakes that are so common that, anybody who's been in business has probably made those mistakes when they're trying to hire. And I know I have many times, and boy, what an enormous amount of money that I would have saved if I had not, known some of this stuff, 20 years ago. So this is worth your time. It's painful, but it is definitely worth it to get through it. You'll get better as you do it. So I hope this was helpful today. The next video we're going to talk about the idea of references, which some of you right now are thinking, well, I don't need to do that. Trust me, you want to listen to that when I talk about that tomorrow, the next day. Again, appreciate your time today. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please do. Hit that button or bell on YouTube. All that good stuff. Share it with your friends and colleagues. Because we need to get the word out about this stuff. We're in a difficult environment right now. People can use all the help they can get. Put your comments in there, any feedback you've got for us, and we'll be more than happy to answer that. I hope you have a fantastic day, and just go out and start using this stuff because it actually does work from real experience. It's not theoretical. We've actually used this stuff. It makes a huge difference in your business. So thanks for your time.